Hi, this is Harriet Grayson, your host and producer for Community Culture Showcase. And now it's almost summer. We're just about ready to celebrate Memorial Weekend. I know there are lots of activities going around in all of the towns around. There'll be parades, there'll be all kinds of marches and celebrations of the many people who have served in our armed forces. So that's Memorial Weekend. Welcome summer. Here we are. And I have a great guest today. We're going to talk about theater. We're going to talk about movies. We're going to talk about wonderful events that happen in this part of the world and that we all should appreciate, and we should all become patrons. So let me introduce my guest, Christopher Donohue, who is the board president of our local, the Granite Theater, a community theater that's been around and is located in downtown Westerly, Rhode Island, across the street from Wilcox Park. Can't miss it. And Chris, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I think this is a great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to working with you on this project, which is your film festival.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about the history of the theater and how you think that the new film festival kind of meshes into where you see the future of the theater.
Sure. Well, the theater's been around for a really long time. In the 60s, the 1960s, it was actually first used as a theater. And I, in high school, actually acted there in a couple of plays. It has changed. It became the Colonial Theater. And they were doing live performances there. And then in 2000, Paul Lynch bought the theater and arranged for the financing of the theater and actually renovated it so that it's now a very comfortable 140-seat theater. With slanting seats, there's no obstructed views. It's a wonderful, wonderful jewel of a theater that Westerly is really lucky to have.
Oh yes, and I have been a patron for at least about a decade. I go to see every single performance, that every play,
Yep.
every comedy, every musical. And you have kind of a, not necessarily standard, because some of the plays I see are things that I'm not necessarily familiar with. So how do you,
Well, we try to balance it. David Jepson, who's the artistic director, has chosen the season for, now it's his 19th year. And it's a wonderful mix of comedy, drama, musicals, and mysteries, which are very, very popular. So yes, thank you for being a loyal subscriber, because we've had a wonderful audience. We are changing though, because the opportunities now, the entertainment pocket in Westerly is being divided up in a lot of places with all the new restaurants. The United Theater is going to be coming on board, which is wonderful. We have the Knickerbocker Music Center, the library itself, the Arts Collaborative. Westerly is now a destination for the arts, and we're really going to be part of that. If there's a crown, we're one of the jewels in the crown.
Yeah, that's true. And of course, I've lived in Westerly since 1999, and I have seen this dramatic change in the downtown. Just what you're suggesting, lots of restaurants, the United Theater finally sort of getting around to getting itself renovated, and of course the Granite Theater being there forever and ever, and then Shakespeare in the Park, which comes in.
Absolutely.
So it's been a fabulous experience being a Westerly resident. I can just basically walk downtown and catch all this stuff. It's just absolutely fantastic.
It is terrific. It's really terrific. We're very lucky.
You are. So how did you get involved in the theater? I gather that you are a thespian yourself.
Well, actually, I couldn't make it. I couldn't get paid to really do it. So after college, I did work at the Trinity Square Repertory Company right after college, which was a dream job. So because my loft building downtown Providence, which was not the Providence you know today,
Yes.
above Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel, it was $75 a month. So I could take the $100 a week that Trinity was willing to pay me to be a public relations assistant. So that was wonderful. And I stayed in the theater for a full year working with Adrian Hall, who's a brilliant genius of the theater, who really made the Trinity a nationally recognized one. But after that, I said, okay, time to really make a living. So I went into a lot of different fields. I was a television producer at one point in Boston, done public relations and all that. So when I retired from the financial services industry in 2008, which may ring a bell for a lot of people.
Yes.
Everything goes away. And I said, this is a good opportunity for me to retire. And I came back to the area. And I looked around and I said, gee, I think I'll go acting again. Why not? So I did. So I did 4 plays at the Granite Theater. And then I decided, well, you know what, I could really contribute more. than my enormous acting ability, just kidding. I could contribute more in doing marketing and public relations. And so I worked my way in.
So what's the schedule going to be looking like for the rest of the season?
Well, we are opening The Curious Savage, which is about a woman of a certain age who inherits $10 million, and her children all gather around to help her spend it.
Yes.
And it's a funny comedy about greed and miscommunication and family dysfunction, which
everybody knows.
And then after that, we have a wonderful Neil Simon comedy, which everyone will remember, Barefoot in the Park, about the stringent newlyweds, or the husband's very, very tight, and the wife is, a fly.
Yes.
And after that, we have On Golden Pond with Beth and David Jepson, the two artistic directors, recreating their role as the Thayers. So we go from young love to lifelong love.
Yes.
And pure comedy, and then tragic comedy maybe, or what would you say, a sentimental story about an elderly couple.
Yes.
And then we will be looking at The Hollow, which is a very less known Agatha Christie play.
Okay.
The Hollow is the name of a house where the murders happen, and if you love Agatha Christie, which I do,
yes, yes,
somebody's killed and then somebody else is killed, usually, and all of their lives come unraveled and everybody finds out the secrets. And after that, Man of La Mancha.
Oh, wonderful.
Which will be a wonderful musical I think everyone loves. And then we're ending with A Christmas Carol, which we do quite often.
Yes,
and
but in different variations.
Yes, a musical version sometimes. David and Jepson actually did a one-man show, playing all of the characters. So we've had that. We've had just the straight show itself. And it should be interesting this year, too.
How do you go about choosing what shows you actually decide to produce?
Well, I think that's part of the genius of David Jepson, because it was a nice mix. Paul Lynch had an idea that it would be wholesome entertainment. Other theaters do cutting edge. Our audience, I think, prefers to have what we now sort of rebranded the theater. We call it Westerly's destination for comedy, drama, mystery, and musicals.
Okay.
And that's what it is.
Yes.
And so there's always something different. We occasionally do a show that we did a Pulitzer Prize winner twice now. Proof, which was one that was on Broadway. And then this year, we opened with a wonderful The Game's Afoot, which had a Connecticut connection, because a lot of our audience goes 50-mile radius.
Right.
Okay, so when you're in Westerly, that 50-mile radius includes a lot of Connecticut. And we're really pleased with that.
Right, right.
So.
How do you know who your audience is?
Well, that's an interesting question, because it has changed, or it will be changing. The audience, for the most part, throughout the years, grew with us. Okay, a lot of people like yourself have been coming for a long time. So, I myself am up there in age, so we have quite a older crowd. But we're also getting a lot of young people, because there is a certain magic about live theater. And if you enjoy it, there's nothing better, because it's not as intimate as a black box where the actors are right in front of you.
Right.
But it is definitely 140 people. It's 7 rows. So you're close enough, but you're also kind of removed. So it's a really nice experience.
I must say, as being a patron and a long-standing patron, that the theater itself is extremely comfortable. I mean, the seats are comfortable. And it is, as you mentioned, there's not a seat in the theater where you cannot see everything that's going on. It's just one of those kind of remarkable little theaters that you enjoy coming to, and where the actors are really close. It's almost like you don't even need a microphone. You're that kind of intimacy that's actually possible. So yeah, that's really quite wonderful. And I look around, and there aren't a lot of theaters like that one.
No. As a matter of fact, as I say, we had a very big hit last year with Annie, which is a cast of
Many.
Many.
Plus a four-legged one.
Plus a four-legged one. And that was pretty amusing to have our own little Sandy dog. And we did a wonderful audition for the dogs.
Oh.
I know, and that made the papers because it's kind of an interesting enough story. But that also brought in, as I say, a lot of more younger people.
Right.
And so, doing things, we're really growing the audience, and we have been. And you speak of, you can hear without microphones. We just got a wonderful grant from the Latner Foundation to put in a new sound system.
Well, that's great.
And yeah, and it's being supported by the Latner Foundation, and we do get grants, mostly for the facilities, because one of our missions also is to keep that iconic building.
Right.
Now, people use the word iconic these days as though it's just sort of another word.
Yes, yes.
But truly, this wonderful Greek revival, it looks like the Parthenon. And it is just a wonderful, wonderful building, and part of our mission is to keep that building alive.
Well, it is, as I understand it, part of the historic district, and therefore there is some, like the federal government for one, and some state governments are interested in keeping buildings which are part of that historic district.
Absolutely.
That's all over the place, and so that benefits from it.
And it's hugely costly, because we had a column that had rotted out, one of the 4 columns, and repairing that to the same exactitude of the original construction is very costly. And you have to get a historical architect, you have to get some craftsmen who can actually recreate these wonderful ionic columns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And it's quite lovely. So I could describe for folks. You sort of walk up this old concrete steps, and you go into the building. And downstairs is the lobby, quite lovely. You can sit around, beautiful, comfortable chairs. You can buy yourself candy. You can buy yourself
A glass of wine.
a glass of beer. The local brewery is involved with it. Grayson Brewery.
Grayson, wonderful supporter.
Yes, exactly. And then you sit around, and there's a new box office, literally a real box office, like you'd see at any theater that you might go to.
Yes.
Then you walk up the stairs, and then you sit in this lovely. And if you are disabled, you actually have a ramp that allows people to get into the theater, not using the actual lobby and up the stairs.
Right. It's a challenge for people with disabilities. But I have family members with disabilities, and so you have to accommodate that. We're not fully handicap accessible, but we will be.
Okay.
That's part of our plan, I think. And when you said the concrete steps, they're actually granite.
Oh,
on the way up to the granite.
Oh, granite. So, that's cool.
Yeah.
You need to advertise that more.
Well, you know what? They need to be repaired because they're kind of funny.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you that. Yes.
Anybody got any money? Just come on by and we'll
that's
take
right.
your money.
You are a nonprofit organization, so absolutely. So, what made you think that we would have a good fit with a film festival and a community theater?
Well, one of the things that I think is going to be very interesting going forward in Westerly is that you're going to see a lot of collaboration. Because all arts organizations, it's like McDonald's across from Burger King, okay? Why? Well, because when you have a lot of opportunities for art in one place, people will tend to really patronize all of it.
Right.
And so, for example, the film festival is a wonderful idea, and we should be talking about your film.
Yes,
actually.
we're going to talk about it.
But we're very excited because we have a projector and a screen, and we're able to project movies. And we did it last year, and this one will be the second time we do it, and we can actually do that more often now.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
to
In
mix
fact,
it up.
today, later today, I'll deliver to you the DVD that you can use for the showing.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so I'll tell a little bit. So
Please.
for 25 years, there has been a film festival in Southeast Connecticut. It is actually again, it is also a collaboration. It is supported by the Jewish Federation in Eastern Connecticut. And we get support from the Mystic Luxury Theaters in Mystic. Last night I went and saw a movie there, Shoelaces, which is a real tearjerker, and I just love those kinds of movies. Then we also, The Guard, which is in New London, which is a performing arts center. They have been extremely generous over the years, and they host a movie. They usually host the opening, which they did this year, and they host the closing, and we usually have some food and talk, some speakers and things of that kind. So this year, Chris and I had a nice opportunity to chit-chat, And we decided to put a movie as part of the film festival in downtown Westerly at the Granite Theater. And that movie is The Gentleman's Agreement. And some of you say, oh, well, that's an old movie. Well, it is. It's from 1947. It has a wonderful performances by some of the best actors of the day, Gregory Peck, Dorothy McGuire, and John Garfield. I'm a great John Garfield fan from years and years and years. It is a 1947 movie. It is in black and white, but it has a theme that resonates right now, right at this moment in this country. Now, the theme of this movie is anti-Semitism, and it talks about a journalist, that's Gregory Peck, who goes ahead and finds out all about what's called, quote unquote, a gentleman's agreement. But I think it has, interest well beyond just anti-Semitism, because unfortunately we're living in times where hate crime is just rising and rising, and it could be against Jews, it could be against Muslims, it could be against gays. I mean, we have, under the current kind of milieu, we'll be seeing this rise of kind of radical right kinds of people, and then also maybe perhaps on the radical left. And it is producing some very ugly kinds of incidences in this country. So part of what we're going to do is we're going to host at the Granite the 1947 movie, Gentleman's Agreement, and also we're going to have a reception beforehand. So come, it's 6 o'clock. That's when the reception begins. We're going to have lots of homemade food and fruit and cookies and all kinds of other lovely things to eat. The Granite Theater provides, if you want to purchase some wine or beer, and people can have an opportunity to kind of mill around and chit-chat. And that reception is hosted by Congregation Shahara Zedek, which is the small synagogue in Westerly, Rhode Island. Again, a collaboration. So we have a synagogue, we have a community theater, we have a film festival. So that's what we love. And this is the 25th year of this film festival. So we've been doing it for years and years and years. The interesting thing is, of course, is that most of the films that we show in the film festival are foreign films. So there's the kind of, you have to watch carefully and put your glasses on to go ahead and read the subtitles. The good part is if you're hard of hearing, it doesn't matter because you just have to read the subtitles. So you don't miss a word. And that is also part of the idea of an international film festival. So this year our movies come from everywhere. The only American movie will actually be Gentleman's Agreement, and of course it's obviously in English, so there's no need to have the subtitles. But we have had films from Israel, from Germany, from Scandinavia. We try and find films from all over the world. And I have been on the Film Festival Committee now, this is my 3rd year. And when I first got on, other than loving to watch movies, I didn't have any particular knowledge about what's involved in hosting a film festival. Well, it is very, very intricate in terms of what we have to do. And luckily, I'm not the person who actually makes those contract decisions. You have to shop around. There are international distributors, which have nothing to do with actually the companies that actually made the movie. So there's that new layer, and it's usually from a distributor that we go ahead and actually, you essentially renting the movies. You're not actually ever owning the movies, and you actually rent it for 1 performance or 2 performances. Last year, the film festival was in Westerly, and we were hosted by United Theater. And in that case, we had a movie that had shown other parts of Connecticut, and then just re-shown it in Westerly. So there is a kind of a screening fee that goes beyond the original fee. And it's kind of like a complicated kind of business. And it fluctuates in terms of how much money it costs to rent a film. Depends on the popularity. So when we start the film festival, we're oftentimes in the middle of award season. So Toronto, Venice, there are film festivals all over the world that are going on. As these films, they're international. So as these films become less or more popular, then actually the price changes. So it's a very kind of interesting, and you got to get them, and they don't usually want, those distributors don't want to have you sign your name until they're kind of sure where they're going to fit in terms of how much money they can actually charge you. It's a fascinating business. Wouldn't have known a thing about it if I didn't sit on the film committee. So I'm learning all the time, and I get to screen about 50 movies a year. This year, we had very few comedies, and that's just looking around internationally. We just didn't find an awful lot of comedies. We do screen some documentaries. We do screen some shorts. So we had, the opening was at the Guard last week, and the movie, we had a multi-stage kind of thing. We had a choir singing, we had a short, and then we had the movie itself, and then we had a reception afterwards. So that was a really big deal. The Granite is going to be a small big deal in the sense that we will have a reception. We will actually show the movie, and then after the movie, we're going to have a discussion. I'm going to lead the discussion with some local clergy, and we're going to talk about the hate crime that's going on in this country, the rise in that hate crime, where it's coming from, and what can we possibly do as members of a community to stop this kind of stuff. Luckily, I don't think we see anything here, but listen, people in Pittsburgh were surprised to find somebody came in there and shot all these people just while they were worshiping. I mean, I think people in New Zealand were mystified to find out that some of their mosques, somebody came in there and murdered these people. I mean, the stuff that's going on is frightening, because we have history of this kind of stuff, and the right, whether it be in this country or in Europe or in New Zealand, is finding an audience. So it's sort of our civic duty to try to show something like the gentleman's agreement, show the poison that can exist in society, and then think about, well, what is it we can do to rectify this? How can we as citizens and maybe as theater goers support things that open up the ugly secrets and let us take an opportunity to see where this hate actually comes from. So I love the idea and agree with Chris about collaborations, and the film festival has been always this sense of collaboration.
Well, I must remark that 25 years is a wonderful, wonderful track record, and right now in our country, among others, okay, Europe as well, Britain, we are struggling with immigration. And what's fascinating to me, and is not, I don't think, often enough said, we have somehow gone from a nation of immigrants to a nation who doesn't want immigrants. And that's crazy, okay? So we have this history. So something like a gentleman's agreement, even since 1946, and we're talking about somebody who goes undercover to, I don't know if you remember the movie Black Like Me, was in the 60s, where someone darkened their skin.
Oh, yes.
So they could experience what it was like to have the everyday prejudice against African Americans. Certainly, there are ways for us to educate, because really, hatred, hate crimes is ignorance. That's what it is. And educating people through film is a way to both entertain and educate, to actually get the message out that there is a certain amount, I believe, of empathy that is lost now in our country, where bullies are praised, where celebrity, lots of these shows that are on television are just people misbehaving. And the worse they misbehave, the ruder they are, the more money the show seems to make, I guess. Because the real this or that, the Real Housewives or the real this, or it's like the show will come on with the real bullies. Okay?
Yeah, the next one.
And it's incredible to me. So I'm particularly proud to be associated with this, and I'm glad that the theater is going to be used this way, because the communities need to understand this. They need to understand that it's really not tolerable. Intolerance is intolerable.
Right. And this, this particular movie is just spot on. I mean, it's talking about anti-Semitism, but it's spot on exactly in terms of what's going on today with this crazy anti-immigrant. Now, I was trained as an urban planner, and part of my training is the whole demography, and demography is, I studied immigration here in this country
Sure.
and across the world. And so in this country, I mean, we are, with very few exceptions, as most of us are not Native Americans, we are immigrants. We've come here in one way or another. And usually what happens is the group that comes first sort of picks on the people that come after. We've historically we've had that, yes.
Certainly.
And immigration has always been in this country a political issue, so that we expand or shrink who we accept and how many people we accept and under what conditions we accept,
Sure.
based on the political winds. And that has definitely been happening. And historically, it's always happened.
It has. I mean, I lived in Boston for many years, and being Irish, of Irish extraction, I should say, or distraction maybe, there was a time in Boston, and people I think know this, that there was actual signs in the window that Irish need not apply to particular open positions in the small merchant shops. And we're talking about the 1800s. The first wave of Irish immigration is 1840 or 1830, so to speak. And you know, it's interesting because the same thing happened when the Italian immigration came in. And however, what was different then, which is kind of difficult, is that the assimilation process really was, and it was easier for the Irish because they spoke English, not as much for the Italians, who learned English very quickly so their children could go to schools and all that. And it has changed, where we now have to have a multicultural approach to things. It's only fair not to bury the past of other cultures in the way that really sometimes the Irish culture was just, there isn't any. I mean, but Americans had to start practicing St. Patrick's Day, for example, when in Ireland they don't. Okay, it's just another day, kind of. I mean, it is St. Patrick's Day, but you don't really have, they're starting to take our traditions of parades and whatnot, which is very interesting to me. So this is a wonderful thing. As a matter of fact, I'm just remembering now that our second show this year was the last night of Ballyhoo.
Yes.
And it was set in, and you should talk about it.
I saw it,
Okay.
yes. Yes, it takes place in 1939 in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's all about, within the Jewish community, copying what had been the other communities. You'd have a debutante ball, and that's what Ballyhoo actually was.
Correct, yep.
So it shows the kind of divisions among an immigrant group like Jews, just like with Italians. So the ones from Milan spit on the ones who came from Sicily. And so and within Jewish culture, the German Jews who came in the 1840s and 1850s were less than kind to the many Jews who came in, the Eastern Europeans, in the 1880s into the 20th century. So yeah, and I guess it's a human nature thing. We gotta rise up against it, because
Right.
we want pecking orders. We want someone always to be below us, and we want to aspire to be better than the ones above us. And maybe it's human nature.
Well, it's interesting. Yesterday, when I got home, I turned on the television, and there's a movie called Made in Manhattan. Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo,
Yes.
stars with Ralph Fiennes, who is running for Congress or State House, or he's running for office. And she's a maid in a hotel, and he mistakes her for being a guest in the hotel. And they have somewhat of a little bit of a romance. She has a son. She's not widowed but separated. But being from the Spanish part of town, okay, in the Bronx, and her mother, she's happy to have a job as a maid. And her mother's convincing her to just remember who you are and stay in your place. And she rebels against that, of course, because it's who are you to tell me to limit myself?
Right.
And so the lesson is still that thing. It's the same lesson. You know, you keep them down, keep them down, keep them down. I mean, there was a scandal in Boston years ago where the Plaza Hotel, the Copley Plaza, would change the names of their housekeeping staff. So no more Consuela, that had to become Carol.
Oh.
And, no more Concepcion, it had to become, Julie. And this was to protect the sensibilities of the mostly white guests.
Right.
And it was outrageous. It's outrageous. Just sort of like, good Lord, what were they thinking?
They weren't.
They weren't thinking.
Well, they were,
Well,
because they had that was their marketing.
But they were thinking wrongly.
Yes.
And so that comes out, and you're a maid in a hotel, or, housekeeper in a hotel. You deserve to be called, and this happens in this movie actually. You deserve to be called your name.
Whatever that might be.
Whatever that is.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And it gets pretty tough, but this is a good thing to remind people of, because I'm not sure, if you look back at World War II, which is my parents' generation, and you say, how the heck did that ever happen? And here we are.
Yes.
Yes.
I
mean, here we are blaming, with this whole xenophobia, okay, anybody that's from out of here, And what I really get disappointed in, because I've traveled all over the United States. I was lucky enough to have a job that took me everywhere. And I loved going to Texas and Atlanta, Georgia, and Minnesota, and all of the different things that each one parts of the country have to offer. I think the only, when we went to Nevada, no, not Nevada, Utah. A waitress said to my friend and I as we were traveling across country, well, how long are you staying in Utah? And we said, well, we're just here for, we're passing through to California. She goes, that's good, because you're not going to have any fun. And it was really funny. But as a matter of fact, all of these different regions, I'm saddened now because it seems like we're the Baltics now. Okay, the Baltic countries, It's this one against that one. It's this one against that one. You don't like it in Texas, move. Don't change anything. Or, northern people are this way, and southern people are this way, and Californians are this way. And that may be true, but celebrate it.
Part of I think, now I'm putting my planning hat on. Part of it has been that when it comes to immigration, people tend to go to places where there already is, if not family, some kind of distant relationships, cousins, aunts and uncles, friends of friends of friends. So at least in the beginning, when you're really new, and in particular if you're not English speaking, you want to go where you're going to be able to get along. So there is that. So that Minnesota having so many Scandinavians is not an accident. It's because a few went there and then all the others followed. It is not an accident that if you go across the United States and go into motels, that Patel, P-A-T-E-L, is a common name you see. It's not because they're actually all related, but they all are. That's how it started out. Part of India, they all came to the United States, and again, you're looking for people like, at least a little bit like yourself, so that if you don't speak English, you can continue to speak your language, you can have some comfort, perhaps even people worry about safety. So that kind of stuff has actually been happening. But again, we are a huge country, physically, geographically, population-wise, one of the largest countries in the world. We can take in lots more immigrants. When our president falsely declares that the gates are closed, he is mistaken.
He's mistaken.
He's mistaken.
He's mistaken about a lot of things, but we won't go there.
No, we won't. We won't. But the whole sense
we don't have that much time.
Yeah, well, the whole sense is that that we want to be more inclusive, not exclusive,
or tolerant. It's not so much like open the floodgates and everybody come over here. It is tolerant when you get here. Because if you look back, and again, I'm going to bring up World War II, Hitler's rise to power was to start blaming people.
Yes.
And so the Jews were perfect to blame in his mind.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And the Aryan race, and this whole concept, huge amount of science was done, and research was done to find out what really inspired the German people to believe such things, that they were a superior race. Not only were they superior to the Jews, they were superior to you and me.
Yes, and they were going to enslave the Slavic people. All those Russians in Ukraine, they were going to become their slaves and work in the fields for them.
Oh, crazy thing that you think happened, but it happened.
It did. It did.
And it's not that many years ago.
That's right. The propaganda stuff was very effective. We have to be careful that we don't get sucked into this.
When you look at the social media, it is pretty dangerous out there. The internet itself is kind of like was the Wild Wild West. It kind of still is, okay? And then there's the of what they call it, the dark media. No,
Oh,
the dark,
the dark web.
the dark web.
Yes.
You know, all these things. And when you can see, oh my God, the largest or longest running democracy in the world is the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And if its elections can be hacked up, wow.
Yes.
And I'm not just talking about the thing with the president and the Russians. I mean, that's not all fine and good, but it's all fine and good. But you could probably control the elections of anybody.
Oh, yes.
A governor, a mayor, if you go to the right channel. And it's amazing because people sigh. And they go, oh, I'm so weak about it. People stop watching the news because now they don't trust the news.
Yes.
And the irony is that the free press is the only democratic institution that we really need. And I'm not saying we don't need a Congress. I wish they would do more. I don't say we don't need a president. We don't need a court system. But it's all getting a little confusing. The courts are becoming political when they should be neutral.
Yes.
Congress can't get anything done. They've parties over country. It's like, what? That's just unheard of. And it's so un-American, it's laughable.
Yes, except that we're living here.
I know.
Yes, so we, and to
So we
some
really got
extent,
into it, but
yeah,
we'll get back to the movie, though.
no, it's to some extent is the whole purpose of having an international film festival.
Yes.
It is to bring ideas from other countries to an American audience, basically an English-speaking audience. These movies that have many, many languages. So the next movie that is going to be seen at the film festival, not at the Granite Theater, but at Connecticut College, actually, is also one of our venues.
Oh, lovely.
And so the next one is going to be, it's the story of the last night of Passover. And it's not about Jesus Christ. In fact, it's about a German Jewish family facing all of this stuff, just what you're talking about in the 1930s, the rise of Hitler, and the attraction of Hitler's ideas to even this family's own members of the family, as well as some of the other stuff that went on. Because there are some crazy stories that are absolutely true about what happened in Germany during World War II. I mean, there were Jews that hid literally in Germany during World War II. There were Jews that assumed German identity during World War II. I mean, there's all kinds of stories. Anyway, this particular story is about a particular merchant family. They have some money, and this is the turning point. This is a dinner. They all get together and they talk about what's going on in the world. So it's a kind of an interesting movie. As someone who is on the committee, I've seen them all. I mean, the movie I saw last night, Shoelaces, makes me cry. This was the third time I saw it. I was still crying. It's just a sweet, sweet story about a special needs kid and the demands he makes, and it's really wrapped up into a whole family dysfunction and all kinds of stuff. So that was really cool. So that's one. The other one, the next one we're going to have, which is also going to be at the Olean Center, which is at Connecticut College, is a story of rebellion within a family, somebody who really wants to turn their family and everybody upside down. And so that's an interesting kind of movie. So the Passover one is in German. This Turn the Whole World Upside Down is in Hebrew because it's an Israeli movie. And then, of course, I think then we have, and then the last movie outside of the Granite Theater is going to be at the Guard. And it's called The Law, L-A-W, and it actually is about the French fight by mostly women to permit abortion in France. And the woman who leads that is a real person, and in fact was instrumental in French politics, and then became someone also associated with. In Europe, they have the European Union. They actually have elections as well.
Yes.
And she was a member of the political party.
I think they have a parliament.
Yeah. So that's a fascinating story about how you took a country that is predominantly Catholic, but not necessarily religiously practicing these things. However, they are, and trying to turn what had been a religious issue into much more of a political issue, into much more of a women's issue, so that the issue becomes one of I, as a woman, have control over my reproductive rights.
Right.
And given also the climate today of what's going on in terms of the abortion issue, it's also a must see, and it's like a docudrama. It's clearly based on the real things that happen. The woman who leads it is, of course, a lawyer, and it is about changing the law.
Changing the law.
And there'll be a reception on that one too, and that's an afternoon. That's this coming Sunday afternoon at something like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So people would go on Jewish Federation to their website, and they can get a feel for what the next one, there it is, jfec.com. Go there and you can see some of the other movies that are actually during the rest of the week. We put it on from about 3 weeks, and we have had different we've had venues in Westerly before. Last year it was at United Theater. 2 years before that was actually at the Westerly Library. And although they have a kind of lovely auditorium meeting room, it's not quite as comfortable as going to a
real theater.
See, even the Olin Center is not a theater, but more like a lecture classroom. So it sits several hundred people, but it does have the ability to, because you're on a slant.
Sure, yep.
There's not a bad seat in the house. You get that same sense of being able to see the films. And Connecticut College has been involved for, like almost from the very, very beginning. And then the Guard Theater, the Guard Performing Arts Center has been involved. In fact, Jeannie Siegel sits on the Film Festival Committee.
Good, excellent.
And then the Mystic Cinemas has been also a partner for many, many years. And part of the issue about being a partner is I talked about the negotiating for the use of the movie. So the Mystic Cinema, being a commercial theater, and the Guard, although it's a nonprofit, has been in the business of showing movies for years and years. They have a completely different arrangement with distributors than when we go as a film festival and try and get a movie. So it's it's kind of very different. And they're very generous, the Guard and the Mystic Cinemas, because they're renting the movies themselves.
I see.
Of course, the public is strongly invited. And usually what the film festival does is, given the topic, in terms of whatever the movie's talking about, they often find other community organizations that want to co-host it with the film festival.
Excellent. That's
so
great.
if we have something about abortions, we might have a women's rights group who might be associated with it. Again, a great idea for collaboration. Not only they don't necessarily share in any of the costs, but they do then help us to promote the film. So the festival's on for a few weeks, and every year it's a toss about what to show. And it's like, I'm thinking like Jepson, David, choosing what kind of plays to put on. And it's a much smaller idea, but when we sit down together, there's about 12 of us, and we go through these movies, it's a similar kind of thing. We think about one, well, did we like it as a movie? And so there's some yes and some no. Will we find an audience?
Right.
Who will come and who would be willing to watch this movie and pay some money to see the movie? And then a third piece of it is an idea of, because it's international and we're bringing ideas that may be foreign to many people, is the idea of, does it have an educational component to it?
Sure.
That's another thing we think about when we make a choice in terms of what to put in. For example, the film festival through the Guard actually showed Schindler's List, because it's like, I don't know, the 20th or 25th anniversary of the release of that movie. So they showed it for free, and they had hundreds of school kids, high school students, because if anybody has seen it, it's fairly graphic. It's not for 12-year-olds. So they had high school students, I think like juniors and seniors, come. Busloads of kids came to see it. And then in the evening, for nothing, anybody could go in and see the movie. Of course, if you've seen it once, it's a tough movie to watch.
It's pretty.
So it's not sure that you'd want to see it for a second or third time. But again, what was the purpose in having it? It certainly got into the third issue. It's one of education. for the kids to see what happened in the world. And again, some of those same, what we talk about, some of those same elements are there out in our community. We need to understand it. The way to understand it is to see what the ramifications of such hate can produce. So there's that, definitely the educational component. And then with the high school students, we have told people, told the schools what it is. Many of the teachers have probably seen the movie or know about the movie. So they add on to it some educational component for the kids.
Well, when I was in high school, there was a film that we saw. We were probably juniors or seniors. That was called Night and Fog. And it was precisely about loading Jews and others into cattle cars and dropping them off to the concentration camps. And I'll tell you, as a teenager, 17, 18, it was life-changing. Because somebody can tell you a story about something, but if somebody can show you, and this was with actual footage, black and white footage from the period, because a lot of that was documented, because film was relatively new in the 30s.
Right.
Certainly radio, pre-television, but when you went to the movie theater, that's how you got your news. And so some of these images were just so terrible.
Right.
That you say, oh my gosh, that will never happen again. Well, I don't know. At this point, with our current climate politically, we are now housing people in cages at the southern border of the United States. Something that I'm embarrassed about. And to pretend that the world is not watching, and now it is. I mean, it always has been, but now they really can watch, because now with instantaneous communication, somebody can make a movie with a cell phone.
Right.
All of this violence you see in community policing, because people have a cell phone and they can film this.
Right.
And it's like, okay, no more he said, or she said, he said, or he said, she said, or she said. It's, here you go.
Right.
Explain yourself.
Right. And then you bring in the free press, who then has an opportunity to investigate. And then hopefully someone with political clout then can do something to change
about it.
Yes, can change what's going on. So that's that's definitely a measure of where we're at, and the importance of film to educate people. And I think as part of what we do with this International Film Festival, that is exactly clearly one of our missions. Our first mission, because is entertainment, of course. But and two, we need to find an audience. But three, and very important, is this whole thing about educating the public to whatever the movie happens to be about. And we consciously pick movies like The Law, which has definitely a political point to make, versus The Shoelaces I Saw. Was a delightful movie last night. I cried, and it was a sweet thing. But it's educational in terms of having a special needs child who's now 38 years old. So that in itself, but that's really not the real reason we chose it. We chose it because it was entertaining and we thought people would like to see it.
Right. Well, I mean, it's funny because I'm glad that the Granite is hosting this movie because I think it's important for us to be involved with that. At the same time, the Granite Granite is a place for pure entertainment. It's a kind of escape entertainment. It's kind of the fun entertainment. But there are sometimes, I think, even lessons to be learned from a light comedy.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I'm not saying, I think what you're doing is, to me, more serious and more important in some aspects to challenge everybody to be a little more sympathetic. But ours are definitely fun.
Well, there is fun, but there's also, I think, even in your choices, there is, I found that the very fact that you put on the Ballyhoo was in fact a choice that has some kind of cultural importance.
It does.
I mean, I've been going for years. I don't ever remember a play that had to do with any Jews.
Well, you might remember last year we did a play called Choosing Sides or Taking Sides, and it was about an artist, a famous conductor in Nazi Germany at the time, who continued to conduct his orchestra, after the war, and this took place right after the war, when Berlin was divided up into the sectors, with the Russian sector and
Right.
the Western, East and West Berlin. And that was also very thought-provoking with regard to, because his point was, the conductor's point was, in the interrogations he had with the Americans, it's like, I'm an artist. My art is not political. I couldn't take a side because there's nothing political about Beethoven or Bach. And it was an interesting thing.
Right.
Because
Right.
nowadays we find ourselves in the political climate of having to take sides. And there seems to be nothing in the middle. And that's really disturbing.
Right, right. But I'm thinking, have you given any thought to what the next season will be?
We are working on that now. I can't announce anything.
No,
we don't
no.
know. But I'm not saying that we will do anything terribly different.
Okay.
I think it's a good recipe, if I can use that word, of a combination of all of those comedy, mystery, and all that kind of stuff I see. And I think what we will probably do, though, at the theater, is sort of fill in some of these gaps with film festival participation, for
Right.
example. I think there are a lot of musicians. I'm thinking, we might be throwing together a cabaret in the lobby
Right.
after the show or after the matinee
Right.
on Sunday. We're looking at maybe doing a Saturday matinee, which would really open the doors for a lot of people who, like myself until a few weeks ago, don't like to drive at night at all, and yet still be able to come to the theater and enjoy it. So there's all sorts of different things we can look at.
Did I understand that you were going to be working to have like a children's theater group?
We are actually working already
Okay.
with the YMCA.
Yes.
And we do a small children's group. I think it's middle school ages, 8, that sort of age. And Jane Mandes, who serves on our board, is a wonderful social worker who is one of the instructors. And Warren Uzi, who is one of our actors, he also works at the Y.
Okay.
And so they put that together. And just the other day, I met with the new directors, whose names are going to escape me right now, of the Colonial Theater, who will be putting
Okay.
on A Midsummer Night's Dream this
summer.
which I think is a great title to
Right.
have this summer. And they're putting together, and have started actually, at the Westerly High School,
Working with the
theater part,
group.
or the theater, the
Yes.
kids who are interested in theater.
Yes.
And I want to pull those kids in as fast as we can to learn about theater arts,
Right.
which is not just acting.
Yes.
Okay, it's set design, it's costumes,
Props.
it's sound, props, it's sound, it's
yes,
lights, it's
yes.
all these things. And so, to keep our artists strong, I mean, art's difficult and it's not well funded. I remember when I was at Trinity in the 70s, the National Endowment for the Arts was really big, and they actually gave grants for us to have busloads of high school students come into the theater and see a live performance.
Right.
That's not happening anymore.
Right.
As a matter of fact, they're cutting arts programs in all the schools,
Yes.
which is, why Johnny can't read? Well, why Johnny can't think
Yes. Yes.
is more to my point, because I get very discouraged with the thought that it becomes unimportant. I think we cut back on the wrong things. We cut back on
Yes.
schools. I think we need to be cutting back on tanks. But that's just me.
No, I can relate to that. When I was a kid going to high school, which was probably clear or near at the same time you were, I was in New York City, and I did take theater, and part of that was they put us on a bus. I would, like once a month, we went into Manhattan and saw a Broadway and off-Broadway show.
That was such a lucky thing.
And we saw it. I saw Rhinoceros in French.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we saw Shakespeare, of course. Then we saw comedies, we saw musicals. It was, and I don't recall, maybe I'm wrong, that my parents ever put in a nickel for that. So it was, fairly amazing. This opened up the theater for me.
Sure.
I mean, I was 16, 17 years old, and here was a whole kind of life. And later, interestingly enough, when I went to college and was joined the school newspaper, I became a reviewer.
Right.
And that because I had this great exposure to theater when I was young. Now, my mother always loved musical theater, always loved musical theater. So even when I was younger than that, she'd take me at least once a year. But this school experience was, I remember, like going once a month.
It's the foundation. You know, I just want to add one more plug for Theater by the Sea, which we're also lucky to have in Rhode Island. Actually, the fellow who directed our first play this year is associated with them, and we sold an ad in our program to them. And at first it might seem crazy, like why would you advertise another theater in your theater program? It's like, of course I would, because we're not competing.
Right.
Okay, we're collaborating in different ways. Now we're not going to do shows from there, we're not going to exchange actors because they're at Equity House as far as I know, so we can't do that. But gosh, it seems to me, you know, the right thing. You know,
yes.
To have that, to acknowledge that, and we'll do the same thing with the United when it's up and running.
Right, right.
You know, and I'd like to get involved a lot with. See, we're lucky. The Flock Theatre in New London, for example, does wonderful things at Conn College. I went to see The Merry Wives of Windsor last summer, and I was blown away. And I took 2 years of Shakespeare in college. But I didn't concentrate on the comedies.
Right.
It was all the tragedies and the histories.
Sure, sure.
And so for me to now see this wonderful production out in the open air with a blanket, bring your own lunch, and that's what happens, of course, in Wilcox Park.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
in the
Well, the other
Shakespeare.
thing, the other theater is, of course, O'Neill, where they
yes.
bring young playwrights, young meaning in experience, not necessarily in age, and then test out some of their plays. And so that's also a wonderful, I mean, I don't think many people know O'Neill was actually in New London, but the fact that you know, that it's there in Waterford.
Yeah, their summer house was in New London, right on, it's not Pequot Avenue. But that house is still there and dedicated to him. Yeah, I was so delighted when I get back down to the area, because I grew up in Pawcatuck, and to find out that there's all this very rich theater in Rhode Island and in Connecticut.
Yes.
You know, Hartford Stage, Trinity Square.
Right.
There's a theater in Wakefield.
Yes.
There's theaters in Newport.
Yes.
You know,
it's always had this kind of strong tradition. I think also to some extent in Connecticut, I think it's the influence of Yale University.
Very likely.
And in Providence, Brown University, having very strong humanities and arts and theater programs.
Well, as a Providence College graduate, I have to put that in.
Oh, okay.
Because I acted in college, and
Okay.
now the college has really a theater that is enviable. Is really enviable.
Yes, yes. Well, this is wonderful. We want people to come. It is June the 3rd. Start at 6 p.m. You'll get lots of fun things to eat. 7 o'clock, gentleman's agreement. After that, you can join me, and I'm going to have a discussion with local clergy about hate crime and what we can do about it as conscientious citizens of this great and free country. So I want to welcome people to come to that. I want to thank you, Chris, for coming on my show.
My pleasure.
It's been wonderful. And I want to also let my audience know about, as many of you know, sponsor or promote Literary Salon, Books and Brews. It's the place where local authors and the public are invited to read. We just have open readings. We are hosted by the Malted Barley in downtown Westerly, Rhode Island. It is a great, fun place. My hat's off. Lots of cheers and good wishes to Colin Bennett, the owner of the Malted Barley, for letting me doing this. We've been doing it for a couple of years. Our theme on June 24th, 7:30 p.m. is summer. So, do you have a favorite poem? Do you have a favorite short story? Do you have a favorite fiction or nonfiction book about summer? Come and read before us. If you're a local author and you have some books to sell, we welcome you to come on by, whether or not the theme is summer or not. So come on by, June 24th. The Malted Barley has the most delicious pretzels in the world, and the beer is first rate. So come on down. We love to see you. This is Harriet Grayson. I am your host and producer of Community Culture Showcase, and I also want to give one big plug to our upcoming 5th anniversary in this gorgeous, gorgeous studio here in Groton, Connecticut. Come on by Thursday, June 13th, 5:30 to 8. You will be fed, you will be dined, and you will see the most beautiful art We need your support. Local artists need your support. We're here to help local artists. So come on by and support us. I want to thank everybody and have a wonderful, wonderful Memorial Weekend.